Hello, my name is Liz Torlée. I'm a novelist and short story writer. And today I have the opportunity to interview Shane Joseph about his latest novel, Victoria Unveiled, In Search of Sentience. Let me first say a few words about Shane. He's a writer and a publisher, and he incorporated Blue Denim Press in 2011. He began writing as a teenager living in Sri Lanka and has never stopped. Redemption in Paradise, his first novel, was published in 2004, and his first short story collection, Fringe Dwellers, in 2008. In 2010, his novel After the Flood won the Canadian Christian Writers Award for Best Futuristic Fantasy Novel, and his story collection, Paradise Revisited, was shortlisted for the Read It Award. His novel Empire in the Sand was released last fall, and now we're looking forward to the release of Victoria Unveiled. Being an author myself and very interested in the way the publishing industry works, I want to focus these questions on the aspect of this book that zero in on the publishing industry in Canada. So Shane, there's no hiding the fact that this is your own much loved industry, and you're often skewering it, albeit a little tongue-in-cheek. Tell us about why you're doing that.
To your point about skewering the publishing industry, I'm concerned about it because we are a small industry in Canada. We are buffeted by the very large US market in the South, and even by the international market that threatens to come from the outside. We are, as I said, the large publishing houses are usually branches of international publishing houses. And the middle tier in publishing in Canada is disappearing. And we're left between very large houses and very small houses like Blue Denim Press. And then also below that is a whole bunch of self-published authors who struggle to get attention. So it is a very fragmented market, and it needs help. It needs passion. It needs committed people who will come in there and try to make a difference. I've been trying to do that. But I need another 100 of myself doing this, to restore the middle tier to Canadian publishing. So yes, it is a concern, and I tried to bring it out in this book through, I guess, a little bit of comedy, a little bit of tongue in cheek, because there's no point in beating up an already beaten up industry, in a serious manner. It's better to just laugh at it and point out to some of the weaknesses in a humorous way, but hopefully that they will register with people and realize that yes, we do have a problem in Denmark, as I say, or Canada.
Actually, is it mostly Canada? Do you think the problems that you've just detailed exist in other countries like the US, like England, like Australia?
Well, I think all small markets about the size of Canada are facing the same thing. I think Australia has the same problem. I think some of the even smaller markets, like I was in Iceland once, and I heard some really startling information that in Iceland, authors are paid a salary by the government. So the government wants to preserve their artists in a very concrete fashion. And now that's a market of 300,000 people, where they publish a disproportionate number of books a year in their language, which nobody else reads. So there is a tremendous desire to preserve what they have, to preserve their culture. So that's Iceland on one side. And then you have all the smaller markets on the other side. I think the US is a very commercially driven market, and they kind of dominate the world between the US and the UK. They're at least the English-speaking world. And those markets are purely commercially driven, I think. And they're they're established markets. They've been around for a long time. So they have economies of scale and economies of connections, because distribution is very important. And they have their tentacles into every market for distributing their products. So those markets are, I think, opportunity and threat to the small guys. I mean, I get my books distributed through US channels because they do have distribution channels that work for me, and they're cheaper than the distribution channels we have in Canada. So yeah, it's a very lopsided situation.
When I write personally, I go through a number of different emotions, and I hope those emotions end up on the page. When I read, I like to imagine the emotions that are going through the mind and the heart of the author I'm reading. In this case, I felt you were having a lot of fun, but sometimes you were frustrated and even a tiny bit malicious. Was there a one emotion that dominated as you wrote? Did you write it quickly and want to get it out because of all the feelings you had?
I don't know about the malicious thing. It's a tough one. I don't think I was malicious. Maybe I came across as malicious. Emotional, certainly, and passionate about what I was saying, certainly. I think there was a theory that was emerging in this book about fragmentism, about markets being fragmented. And Kevin, the poet, articulates that in his various platform speeches. The fact that, yes, we are able to reach our audiences now directly because of the various online channels available. We have, print on demand publishing, we have electronic books, we have social media channels that we can put things into. So the writing world is no longer an aristocracy, it's a democracy. We can go direct from author to reader. However, there is a limitation there, in the sense that there's only so many readers an author can reach, even if they're the most social butterfly on social media. There's only so many they can reach, and they need intermediaries who can get them to wider audiences. So literary agents can get them to with translation rights and with movie rights and other distribution rights, they can get them wider audiences. Publishers, like I mentioned, the big ones in the US and the UK, who have their tentacles already spread, can get them into wider distribution. Publicists, and we should not underestimate the power of publicists. They can get some noise around you and get people to pay attention to you, and that could create other opportunities. Translators, we forget about them too, but translators can open up an entirely new market to you by translating your work into another language. So there is a need for intermediaries, but I think with the technology channels that have come about, the author is getting a little bit more control in which of these intermediaries they can pick. They don't necessarily have to fall into a traditional channel that has a set number of intermediaries and distribution processes. They can say, okay, fine, maybe I don't need a publisher, maybe I need a publicist. Maybe I don't need, maybe this market, let's say Japan, is the right market for my book. So I just get a Japanese translator and a Japanese publicist, and I'll go in that direction. And I can sell, 100,000 copies of my book just in that market. So there's ways of slicing the pie that were not there before. And I think that's where, if you're looking at opportunities, that's where the opportunities have been created with the new technology we have.
So you don't see the death of all intermediaries. Like one of your characters actually says, finally, we will be in direct contact with our audiences. We won't need intermediaries like agents and publishers. And even translating, we will surely be able to do through artificial intelligence at some point. But do you actually feel that there'll be new jobs created in this industry that we're not envisaging right now?
Yes, for surely we will have new jobs. We'll have less jobs, but different jobs. Like for instance, even my job as a publisher, I am using artificial intelligence in certain places where it helps me. I'm dreaming of the day when I could have a robot do my accounting, because that's the most painful part of the job. I'm also dreaming of the day when I could get my covers designed. They're very, very close right now because I believe you can, with the right, you can get a robot to design a cover, right? So that would be a new thing for me to do. And again, we don't know what the copyright limitations on some of these things are. I don't think anyone will be able to claim copyright on images because images are composites of so many things. Just as much as you can't claim copyright on ideas because ideas are fused through reading and digesting much data and then spitting out something that's a fusion of everything else, right? So yes, I think there'll be new jobs. There'll be new types of the existing jobs will have different levels of emphasis. And I'm open to it. I'm open to seeing, how AI will change us. I'm not closed in it, and I'm not wedded like art is in this book to, his process. I'm open to the process changing and becoming easier for me, right? Because I mean, I need all the help I can get to get my books out. And if I can get AI to help me in 30 or 40% of that, then all the power to AI.
So on the subject of AI, let's move to the driving theme of the work. As I read it, I felt you're writing about the next major tipping point, which is absolute sentience in the robotic world. How close do you feel we are to that within the industry in which you work? Can you feel it push you on your shoulders? Is it pushing you forward?
Yes, well, already, as I mentioned earlier, the robots are able to create imagery out of text. And they can do text to voice, and they now can do text to video. And they're not doing them perfectly at the moment, but they're getting better, right? So we could end up being just the what do you call the helms people, saying, do me this and do me that, and give me this and that, and take less of this and more of that, and then the robot will serve us back this information, and we will look at it and say, no, this is not good enough. Do this. So we become directors in a play, as opposed to the persons who writes and stages the play ourselves. So in that sense, the role of the writer could change, because the role of the writer is no longer writing every word, but getting a whole bunch of words sent back to the writer based on a prompt you've given the robot to go and work on. So, is it scary? Yes, it's scary, but it's also as scary as when we learned our times table in the school and did multiplication and division and all that, and now we're doing it on a calculator, right? And using Excel for more complicated calculations that it would have taken hours to do manually. So yes, there's a loss in the sense that that muscle that used to work on the multiplication tables is no longer working as well, but the results are still good or better. And so the emphasis we place today on finding the right sentence may be not the emphasis we need, but to think in terms of concepts, ideas, positions we want to have eliminated, and then asking the robot to go and get us the words that will convey that, and then shaping those words to produce the result. So our role as a writer and the functions and the tasks we do as a writer will probably change. We will be more of a director rather than the heavy lifting stuff of crafting words and sentences.
The word director.
It's a lot to handle.
When you say director, that's a very comforting word because that puts us in control again. Some people feel we will eventually become the servant. And one of your characters actually says, if you can't beat them, join them. And he goes over to, quote, the dark side. Do you think there's a danger of that, in fact, it will end up being the dark side and any ingenuity that we have ourselves will be lost?
Well, it'll become the dark side if you let it. And that's the key, right? We have to, as I say, I was talking about regulation. We need to regulate this. And then also we need to choose. So even though there is the ability today for AI to write novels, and they are being written today, do I want that in my books? Like, do I want an AI written novel, given its competence level today, to be writing my books? No, because I still think I'm more competent than the robot to write better sentences and better plots, and to bring out the humanity in my characters. But at some point, if it gets better, then I would obviously want to use it, want to employ it. And I would want to also steer it in the direction I want it to go to convey what I want it to convey. Otherwise, it's not my book, right? If I give up the control of the idea behind the book to the robot, then it's no longer my book. So as long as we can manage the AI to the extent that the identity and the voice is still ours, I think it's okay. And I would probably use it. But if it's, as I said, if it's no longer my voice and it's something alien to me, then it's no longer me and I will not use it. That doesn't mean that it won't happen, right? That doesn't mean that others will not decide, oh my God, I can churn out 100 books in a month, and even if, 10 people read each of the books, I can make more money at it with less effort. And that's going to happen too. Yeah, I think it's already happening. Even a smart publisher could say, I don't need any authors anymore. I could just dictate some prompts to the AI, and I can have 10 genres, and I could put 10 novels out a month. Give them each a name, and I don't have to pay any royalties, and I don't have to do anything else. So, there's umpteen combinations and permutations possible. We just have to choose which ones we want.
You're frightening me, Shane, but I will try to remain optimistic. I just want to ask you another question, a bit of a tangent from the others. This is Art questioning himself while he's watching Bridgerton, and he says, why write carefully researched historical fiction anymore when these mashed up cross-cultural and cross-historical pastiches were gaining mass appeal? So do you believe this trend is part of the political correction movement, or is it an art experiment, the breaking of boundaries and borders, which is theoretically what art is supposed to do? And do you welcome that trend?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because I was recently watching a movie last weekend, just like on the Bridgerton story. It was set in England in the 1920s. And there was a judge of color and a police woman of color. And one of the protagonist's boyfriends, she's a white Irish woman, her boyfriend was a black man. And he was well accepted in the community, and it was natural that he should be her boyfriend. And so I came back and I did some research on, when had the judicial system started to include people of color in England, and when did the police force include people of color in the police in England? And it was in the 1960s, and this film was set in the 1920s, and so it was a complete distortion of history. And so if the intention, and it should be stated up front, if the intention is that we are going to make this a very inclusive movie that, shows diversity, employs diversity of actors, and if that is the intent, then it should be made clear. It's like saying, we're going to do a Shakespearean play in modern dress. So we know the moment you come into the theater and you see guys wearing suits and jackets and whatnot, that they are, it's the dress, but the intent of the play is still the same. Right? The lines are the same and everything is the same. But if there's no declaration of that, it's possible that you will distort the historical, this historical fact. by putting these images in there. So somebody who doesn't know their history about England in the 1920s will think, oh, well, there were people of color there. What's the problem? We have regressed with all the prejudices we have today, right? We haven't progressed, whereas it's just the opposite in reality. So, I think it's important to disclose what your intent is when you try to do these, changing of historical fact. So that we are warned that you're looking at this as an art or a diversity exercise, not a historical exercise.
And how about, I can't resist asking you this, how about the issue of writing in a voice that is not your own? So if I want to write with a man's point of view, or a person of color's point of view, or a gay person's point of view, there are many people who would say I have no right to do that. And this is a big issue in the writing world right now. How do you feel about that?
So I'm going to say this is my point of view. It's my opinion, not everybody else's. I think authors, especially authors, if you're creating a fictive universe, should have freedom to build characters in that universe, right? And that universe will have multiple characters. It'll have people of color, it'll have genders, different sexual orientations, different respects for the law. So you can have criminals and you can have honest people. That's the society we live in today. And so that he or she, as an author, should have the right to reflect that, in as real a way as they can. And if they're writing historical fiction, then they should be able to also reflect the prejudices and phobias that existed at the time, which may not be culturally prevalent today, right? So if there was racism or sexism, back 100 years ago, which there was, then you can't have people there behaving like they behave today. That's unrealistic, right? So I think the author needs to do that. Now, we had that freedom just only a few years ago, and something happened. And it's almost like this wave of, AI came into our world and we let it take over. And I think that's exactly what happened in the cultural area too. These political sensitivities, these moralistic points of view came in from the margins and took over. And the great mass of literati caved and said, okay, we will succumb to you. We will be polite. And I think that's a loss. And I think that needs to be claimed back. Now, I unfortunately have never listened to that. If you read some of my books, you'll know that I'm not politically correct, if that's the word. Because as an artist, I think I need to have the freedom to express what I want to express. The reader has the choice not to read. If they think the work is not in keeping with their moral standard or moral principles, then don't read it. I, on the other hand, read all types of literature because I like to understand what drives people to write books like Lolita, for instance. I mean, there was a brilliant mind behind it. I don't agree with his principles or his morality, but I wanted to understand what was behind writing of that book. And there's been other books like that, right? There's Henry Miller, and there was all these other considered to be retrograde writers who had some deep philosophy underlying all their flawed morality. And if you're not open to literature of all types, then do not claim to be literate. Claim to be in the echo chamber, and live there. Please do not come out and try to sample what is not in your chamber. That's the position I've taken on this. And I said people are free to read what I write or not. And there's no compulsion. We have absolute freedom.
If you could change the world of literature and publishing, and you could affect that change tomorrow, what might it be? What would you do?
Oh, I do a lot of things, but unfortunately they're not realistic. I would like to see I would like to see us move away from subsidies. because subsidies create obligations, and obligations narrow your freedom to express yourself. Now, can we do that? Probably not. There's been subsidies right throughout history. I mean, there's been, every painter or great artist had a patron, and you dare not say anything bad against your patron, right? Otherwise, your commission is taken away from you. So there have always been biased offerings, and so that will continue. But I'd like to see that. I'd like to see artists liberated from that so that they can express themselves as they see the world. I'd like to see the more of the small presses in this country, at least, bloom, because a lot of really creative stuff is happening there, and they are not constricted by, by political flavors of the month, if you will, right? So I'd like to see some of that. Yes, and I'd like to see more voices being heard, because, as a small publisher, I get lots of manuscripts, and there's only so many that I can publish, and I turn away so many, and it breaks my heart, right, when I do that, because I know that I'm capacity limited. This is just me. But where will those guys go, and where will those voices be heard? They need to be heard. So that's why we have this program in our area, where we have this anthology that comes out every 2 years, and we've done 7 now, 6 in the Hill Spirit series, and we've given voice to a lot of authors who have then subsequently gone on to publish their own full-length work. And this year, I believe we are over 50 authors who submitted. Normally there's around 30 to 35. This time there's many more. So what it's saying to me, even though we are trying to prune it down and manage it within limits, that there's a lot more people out there who want their stories heard, and we don't have enough channels to get them heard. So that's why I think that the small presses will probably be the conduit, because the big guys, they need commercial, marketable material, and not everything is marketable and commercial. So we need smaller guys who are willing to, take chances on these independent authors and give them a voice. And then also, the self-published movement, is knocked a lot, but it is increasing. And I think a lot more authors, as the process of getting self-published becomes easier, and as our curmudgeonly generation dies out, if you will, and the next generation comes into play, I don't think any of them are going to go to a publisher. They'll just throw it up on Amazon or on one of these self-publishing channels, because they can go from their laptop to the online world in a flash, and they're not afraid of doing that, right? They don't see the value in all those other intermediaries. So I think that will create a lot more self-published material out there. The question is going to be, how do they make themselves credible? And what's going to influence somebody to read somebody's material that is self-published without that bias saying, oh, this may be badly edited, or this may be whatever, right? But, with the AI tools out there for editing, you could take even a badly written one, have a robot complete the bad sentences and rewrite the bad sentences and put it out, and it'll look very good. So, yeah, I think if expression can be given more opportunity to shine, and that will happen, then I think, yes, we will have a brave new world. It may not look like the one we have today, but it will certainly look a lot better.
So in the changes that you're going to effect theoretically tomorrow, would you hire your sentient Victoria? And other than your accounting, what would you have her do?
Right. So I would ask Victoria to follow my guidance, though. I want her to publish the kind of, or write the kind of books that I would like to see written. Now she may correct me in terms of her ideas may be different, and if they are different, then I'm going to have to listen to her, right, and accept what is reasonable. So maybe the 1 + 1 will equal 3 in this particular case, and we might be able to produce a better book than I had in mind, and I'm open to that. So yeah, it would be very interesting if she's a cooperative person. I don't want a a petulant robot who's got moods and an attitude. I don't want attitude because we get that a lot with authors. So I want somebody who will be cooperative and creative and progressive and supportive. And yes, if all those things are there in the Victoria, hey, I need Victoria tomorrow.
So now I have to ask you, I usually ask, what do you want your readers to think? I'm going to specifically ask, what do you want your writers to think about this novel that you have just completed?
Well, yes, that's a good question. I'd like my authors to be bold. I don't want them to write what has already been written before. You know, the safe, the already done stuff. I want them to strike out in new directions. I want them to be provocative. They don't have to be disrespectful, but they can be provocative. They can stretch our imagination, and they should be asking the what if question. You know, if this happens, what if? What if this happens, what then? Right? And that's what I try to do with this book, right? So, a very unnatural situation. There's a robot amongst us. Now, what are we going to do? How are we going to react to this? And that's what this book is all about. And so, if you can do the same thing, and I don't really mind, and I said I'm not politically correct, so I don't really care about the flavor of the month. Give me a book that is progressive and stimulating, and yes, I'd be interested in publishing that.
With or without Victoria?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's for now I'm without Victoria. I don't have a Victoria, so it's just me.
Thank you very much, Shane, for this. It's been very enlightening, and I feel I've got an awful lot to learn, but the book has made me excited about what there is to learn and what possibilities are out there. So I hope you get many readers, and many readers very excited about the future. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much.